Buddha's Life Story, Part 2, Buddha's Enlightenment. Prologue. Part 1 was uploaded some time ago. I suggest you watch that first as it tells the story of Siddhartha from his birth up to this point. However, if you are only interested in Siddhartha's enlightenment story, then continue watching this video. Also, mind hitting that subscribe button. Making videos like this takes time, and it would really encourage me to make more content like this one and some more if you would just click on the subscribe button. Plus, the button is so shiny. So, hit the subscribe button and smash it until you reach enlightenment. Thanks so much. And with that out of the way, here is the story of when Siddhartha became the Buddha. Chapter 1. Accepting Renunciation. Siddhartha understood that the life he was living as a spoiled prince would not last and that most of it will be gone, that many of it will be lost and would just bring suffering later on. So, a decision has to be made. In his 29 years of living as a prince, he finally saw what the real world is, a world beset with suffering. If Siddhartha wanted to find an answer as to why we suffer, he has to give up his current life. Basically, give up everything he had as a prince and as a future king. Siddhartha was about to give up everything. His lavish, comfortable lifestyle, his family, his chance to become a king, and all the burgers he could have. Only to find the answer as to why we suffer. He must give them up, or else his personal peace will never ever come. You must remember, it was shocking for him to see an old man, a sick man, and a dead man, because he grew up not really experiencing this inside the palace. The sights were traumatizing for him. And for those who possess a thinking brain, you might ask, Siddhartha didn't see old people, sick people, and dead people inside his palace prison? And the answer to this is yes, somewhat. How so? Again, you must remember the father made sure that Siddhartha wouldn't see them or anything that would make Siddhartha become religious or existential. The father literally spoiled his son with riches, comfort, and beauty. Spare the rod, spoil the child. And the child will easily be traumatized later on in his adult life, just like what happened to Siddhartha. Anyway, so Siddhartha was already planning his move, and that is to leave the palace and go far away as much as possible. And he was hell-bent on leaving, no matter what. But this move proved to be somewhat hard to execute. The palace is well guarded. Plus, the party animals who were still present during the celebration for the return of the prince after his visit around the kingdom were still in the palace, all sleeping, all drank, and all hedonistically sleeping together, all lying down on the floor drooling. We all know the prince will escape eventually, so how did he escape? Well, there's a couple of legends explaining how Siddhartha escaped the palace. One legend claims that a mist came which enveloped the palace. The mist lulled everybody to fall asleep. This created the opportunity for the prince to escape. The prince saw that the dancers, the singers, performers, the guards, his family, everybody fell asleep. What shocked the prince was that, as he looked over the sleeping people, everybody looked decaying and rotting. A representation that nothing is permanent in this world. Beauty, riches, or even power, they are not permanent. This further strengthened Siddhartha's conviction of leaving the palace. Bro got scared of the uglies, so he left them all behind. Another legend had a simple explanation. This legend involved Siddhartha's horse. The story says that the prince rode his horse. And the horse simply leapt a great height over the palace walls, and that's how he escaped, according to this legend. Bruh, the horse should be checked for performance enhancement drugs. The horse pretty sure is on dope. Kidding. One important note in all these legends actually is the knowledge that the prince did not escape on his own. The prince was actually accompanied by his charioteer and cousin, Channa, the very same cousin who explained to the prince what growing old, getting sick, and dying means. So, the prince woke Channa up, who was still sleeping comfortably together with others. Siddhartha needed Channa so he could accompany him out of the palace and far away from it. Wait a minute. I thought the prince wanted to leave and all he needed to do was to go through the palace gates actually. But no! He had to wake up his cousin who was sleeping soundly and comfortably so he could accompany him out the palace? Bruh. The two men then left the palace. Upon reaching a great distance, Siddhartha ordered Channa to go back. Of course, Channa was hesitant. Why would he leave his prince all alone, far away from the palace? However, he had to follow Siddhartha's request. Rather, order. See what I mean? Poor Channa. First, his sleep was disturbed so he could accompany Siddhartha on leaving the palace, only to be told to go back to the palace and leave the prince alone in the forest. Bro, come on. The prince also had to bid farewell to his horse. According to legends, the horse could not accept leaving his master. The horse died of cardiac arrest for feeling depressed. I knew it. That horse on some dope, man. It damaged its heart. Bruh, it died of heartbreak. Once alone, Siddhartha wandered the forest, where he met a wandering man. He asked this man if they could exchange clothes. The wandering man was wearing something dirty, muddy, somewhat orangey. Of course, this man, upon seeing how beautiful the clothes of Siddhartha, agreed on the trade. After getting his new old and dirty clothes, the prince set out into the forest to become an ascetic, just like the religious man he saw in his fourth sight. Thus began the life of Siddhartha as an ascetic of the forest. Poor, dirty, and free for the first time. Chapter 2: Being Ascetic. Siddhartha adopted the lifestyle of other ascetics living in the forest, like living a very simple life, wearing nothing but his dirty clothes, and begging for food. While being an ascetic, he didn't forget his real main goal, of course. So, he searched for teachers who could help him find the answers he desired. Siddhartha found teachers that taught him techniques. Techniques such as meditation, yoga, breathing exercises, and fasting. Siddhartha thought all were needed in his quest, especially the meditation technique. Siddhartha thought meditation was something important to keep. Now you know why meditation is an integral part of Buddhism today. However, Siddhartha had to leave his teachers. Why? Was it because he already learned what he needed to learn, so he abandons his teachers? Was Siddhartha being a big D or something? Well, Siddhartha felt that the teachings of his former teachers were not enough to help him find his needed answers about suffering. Siddhartha thought the teachings were okay, but were not helpful enough. Siddhartha was just being a big brain, I guess. It's like leaving a boyfriend or a girlfriend after realizing you don't feel love for them anymore. That's what Siddhartha did here. There was also a point when Siddhartha himself became a teacher. Yet, even being a teacher himself, it was not enough to help him find the answers he needed. Siddhartha was still very far away from what he wanted to find. So, his desire to find his answers grew. He had to seek out other teachers who might have the teachings needed to help Siddhartha find his answers. With this growing desire, he set out to look for new teachers. This is where he met the 5 ascetics. 5 other men who were also staying in the same forest where Siddhartha stayed. These 5 ascetics later became his companions in the forest. Most notable, they taught Siddhartha something extreme. a version of asceticism that would prove to be very dangerous for Siddhartha, who was already living the simplest life an ascetic could have. And the teaching was extreme asceticism, practicing extreme fasting. With the other 5 ascetics, Siddhartha practiced an extreme version of asceticism where they reduced their daily food intake to a single grain of rice, or, according to other stories, a single spoonful of rice pudding with milk every day. For 6 long years, Siddhartha practiced this extreme asceticism. Hunger didn't matter for Siddhartha. Not eating properly for all the sake of finding the answers he wanted, Siddhartha's desire prompted him to practice this extreme fasting, following the teachings of his 5 companions. Bro trying to lose not only his previous lavish lifestyle, but also trying to lose weight, I guess. And I guess you already understand what happened to Siddhartha's body because of this. And no, he did not become a skinny supermodel. But Siddhartha reached a point where his body became so thin that he looked like a skeleton. Siddhartha was so weak that he looked like a part of the trunk of the tree he was sitting under because he wasn't moving at all. After 6 years of suffering this extreme practice of asceticism, Siddhartha still has not found his answer. Instead, he now possesses a body that is ruined by extreme fasting. A body that is about to die, if nothing is to be done. In some stories, it is said that the prince passed out because of extreme weakness and hunger, and that he almost died not being able to find the answer he was looking for. Siddhartha grew up knowing extreme comfort in lavish lifestyle. Now, he was about to die for he allowed his body to undergo extreme fasting and hunger. Bro's about to become a martyr and a fool. So, is this it? Is this the end for Siddhartha? Will he fail in his quest to find answers about why we suffer? No, this can't be the end, right? In the forest where Siddhartha was at, a girl was passing by. Sujata was her name. Siddhartha was so lucky because Sujata saw him in his weakened state. The girl felt bad for Siddhartha, so she brought him and offered him a bowl of rice porridge. Siddhartha accepted the food with his shaking hands. By eating, he finally ended his 6 long year of extreme fasting. Siddhartha avoided death all thanks to this wonderful woman who gave him food. Quick time out! Okay, so I have met a couple of people already who had same idea. Their idea was that Buddhism is too patriarchal, it isn't friendly to women. I tried explaining to them that that isn't the case, and that in Buddhist stories, there's actually a lot of women that helped Buddhism grow to what it is now. Case in point, Sujata. Had she not passed by the forest and offered Siddhartha food, then most probably the prince would have died, and Buddhism would have not existed as a philosophy for some and a religion for millions. So yeah, girl power. Now back to the story. However, by eating, he also broke the trust of his 5 ascetic companions. The 5 ascetics saw Siddhartha eat food and was disgusted by it. They decided to leave him for they thought Siddhartha betrayed their way. Lol, such good friends they are, am I right? As for Siddhartha, this moment in his life actually was pivotal. He finally realized it was useless for him to continue this extreme asceticism and die achieving nothing. This was the moment when he realized something very integral, which later will become an essential part of the Buddhist teachings. The middle way. So, Siddhartha finally decided to abandon his extreme asceticism and will stop subjecting himself with extreme hunger. Out with forced anorexia, in with moderation. According to some Buddhist legends, it is said that Siddhartha released the bowl from where he ate to flow with the current of the river. He then asked, "If I were to find enlightenment, let this bowl flow against the current." And the bowl floated upstream against the river's current. With this sign, he continued living in the forest and practicing his new method of being a holy man of the forest. Being an ascetic, but this time following moderation. See what healthy eating does to you? You can perform miracles if you eat properly. So kids, eat your veggies. Chapter 3. Catching Music, Catching Middle Way. Siddhartha finally recovered his energy. He continued his life as a religious person in the forest, still searching for his answers. This time with a healthier body. This time in a much better condition. And this improved condition helped him catch something from what's passing by him on the river. Who would have thought that eating properly and having a full stomach can be beneficial for you in doing work? Am I right? One day, while Siddhartha was meditating, a boat was passing by. On it was a musician, and the musician was tuning his instrument. Siddhartha listened intently. From this, Siddhartha noticed that if the musician loosened the strings too much, the instrument would not sound good. Later, Siddhartha also noticed that if the musician tightened the strings too much, the strings could break, ruining the instrument. Strings too loose, bad sound. Strings too tight can break the string and ruin the instrument. Both sides of the extremes are not good. Extremes of being too loose or too tight. Extremes. The truth finally revealed itself to Siddhartha. We can say Siddhartha had his aha and eureka moment here. He lived a very lavish lifestyle where he got almost everything since birth, even getting different palaces for all the different seasons. Then, he practiced an extreme form of asceticism and survived almost dying from hunger, as it was required by his 5 friends to not eat well as a form of their practice. And finally, he understood that both lifestyles are extremes of the opposite direction. Siddhartha finally understands that the extreme lifestyles are both problematic, for both of these lifestyles brought nothing but suffering. And the only way to overcome suffering is to try to stay in the middle, so the suffering of life can be managed, and life becomes sweeter. Just like the music he heard from the musician, who tuned his instrument's strings somewhere in the sweet spot, in its middle, so all the strings would sound beautiful. Siddhartha finally realized the middle way. Listening to music really does wonders for the brain, ain't it? So kids, listen to music. Not the crap kind of music we have now, the good kind that encourages you to have a meaningful experience and inspires you to find something important. Like, I don't know, something like the middle way. The light of enlightenment was about to come and shine on Siddhartha. Nirvana was finally a near reach. Or so he thought. It was not going to be that easy, because from far away, a phantom was watching. An abyss wanted to rise. A dark shadow was about to grow and attempt to stop Siddhartha from attaining his enlightenment. Chapter 4. Destructive Temptation of Mara. The god of desire appeared. His name is Mara. Now, Mara is one simple demon. Desire causes suffering, and Mara wanted people to suffer by flooding them with human desires. He wanted desire to rule over men and thus pervert all of them, causing them suffering in this life and into the next, and the next, and the next. A suffering that is cyclical, a suffering that continues, a suffering that is never ending. That is what Mara wants for men. So, upon discovering that Siddhartha was about to attain enlightenment and end suffering caused by desire, Mara was having none of that. Mara was like, "Nuh-uh, no you won't." Mara decided to rise up. He himself, the god of desire, decided to show up. Fear covered the lands. darkness swallowed the sky. Terror ran amok, summoning all manners of fiends and monsters, all to try to stop Siddhartha from reaching enlightenment and finally finding an answer to end suffering. Mara was simple with his own desires, but was also very cunning. First, he sent his beautiful daughters to try and seduce the prince. The demon believed that the physical beauty, lust, and temptation would catch the attention of Siddhartha, and that no one would be able to deny the alluring beauty and seductive bodies of his 3 daughters. Note, in some Buddhist stories or some Buddhist traditions, the daughters represent 3 things. They represent lust, thirst, and discontent. And so, the 3 daughters set out and tried their best to seduce Siddhartha, one after the other. Sorry kids, YouTube does not allow 18 plus things to be shown here, so here's a picture to represent what the 3 beautiful sexy daughters were doing. Yeah. So what was Siddhartha's reaction to all of this? To all of this seducing? To all of this tempting? To all of this lustful acts? The prince remained motionless. He was very impassive to the 3 beautiful creatures seductively dancing and crawling around him. Siddhartha was able to fend off temptation just by being emotionless towards it. Siddhartha's way was the way. He let things happen but was all too impartial to it, as the seduction was against the nature of what he wanted to achieve. Thus, the daughters of the demon failed miserably. Epic fail! Enraged by this loss, Mara commanded his daughters to turn back, and the daughters rotted slowly, turning to dust, revealing the truth that physical beauty, lust, and temptation, they are not permanent. Epic fail! Second, Mara summoned his mighty army of fiends and demons. All were holding weapons, and their number was so great that Mara's army could easily wipe off armies of many cities many times fold. Mara ordered his army to attack Siddhartha, who was silently sitting under a Bodhi tree. With their thunderous roar that filled the surrounding area, the army of demons and fiends shot their arrows, threw their spears, and unleashed their swords all towards Siddhartha. All manners of deadly weapons flew up to the sky and started descending towards the direction of where the prince was sitting. One hit would be fatal, but it wasn't only one weapon that was flying towards the prince. Thousands and thousands of weapons are about to land and would surely kill any mortal being. But before the weapons could touch Siddhartha, all of them turned into flowers. All sharp weapons didn't land, and instead turned into beautiful blossoms and petals, which rained on the meditating prince. Epic fail! Epic flower rain! This once again enraged the demon. He could not believe that not one of his soldiers managed to hit Siddhartha. So, in an act of desperation, the demon himself appeared in front of Siddhartha. Mara wanted to stop Siddhartha himself by mocking the prince. With his taunting, monstrous voice, Mara questioned Siddhartha.
What right do you have to own that seat? What right do you have to own that spot on this planet Earth? What right do you have to own that seat of enlightenment?
Mara then proceeded to claim,
You don't own it because that seat belongs to me. And I have my demons and my witness that the spot where you're sitting, is mine.
Mara's demon cheered for their master and jeered against Siddhartha. For context, Mara here is trying to remove the prince from where he is sitting, for it is where Siddhartha found his answers on suffering. It is the spot where he was about to attain enlightenment. So, Mara wanted Siddhartha out from that spot, basically out and away from enlightenment. With his loud, devilish voice, Mara questioned Siddhartha.
Who will be your witness that you own that spot? Who shall be your witness that you will attain enlightenment?
Siddhartha remained motionless. Then, in an event depicted in many countless Buddhist art around the world, Siddhartha gave out his response. While seated in his meditating posture, Siddhartha stretched his right hand towards the ground. He proceeded to touch the ground with his right hand and said, "The earth is my witness." Upon saying this, a tremor on the ground ensued. The ground shook mightily, scaring all the fiends and demons. This also shocked Mara, which prompted the demon to run away out of fear, as he did not expect this to happen. Siddhartha finally overcame the last challenge towards attaining his goal. He defeated the god of desire, finally overcoming desires which caused suffering. And 6 years after he gave up his princely life, after experiencing extreme asceticism while living in the forest, after realizing middle way, and after defeating Mara, Siddhartha has now achieved enlightenment. Siddhartha has ascended and now has become the Buddha. If you enjoyed listening to this video, you should hit that subscribe button and subscribe. I got more stories to tell and ideas to share. So, you should subscribe. Love you. Thanks for listening.